There's an English saying that goes like, for nothing in this lifetime is as certain as death and taxes. But anyway, on to the economics of the day. On the 1st of July, Botswana actually changed its entire tax regime and rewrote 4 of them. Your Income Tax Act, your VAT Act, your Customs Tax Act rather, and a brand new Tax Administration Act, and all of which just changed on the same day. And most of the coverage that we see in the newspapers right now is that the rich are going to start paying more, but that is just only the smallest part of the story. And let me just walk you through a few of these in terms of what has changed, because depending on who you are, it touches you in a very different way. Good morning, the name is Kilo, one of the voices that are shaping economic intelligence within Botswana. So let's start with somebody who's on a salary, right? Because I assume that's what most people are watching here. If you're earning 400,001 pula, there's now a new top bracket, and of which you're going to be paying 27.5% on the portion of the income that is above that threshold. And that is the headline that everybody's currently going with. But here's what they didn't tell you. Your employers as well have been told, instructed rather, to start using new PAYE tables, and they have up until 30th of September to have regularized that. So you're going to start seeing your pay slip changing throughout the year. And what you probably were seeing in July and September, October, will start be a bit more different. So you want to get clarity on that part, so just don't get surprises, right? And all of this is actually happening at the same time when inflation is currently sitting at 10.7%. So even the people that are below that bracket actually think it doesn't touch them, doesn't affect them, but they are feeling still the same squeeze from a different direction, because your salary might not be taxed more on that spectrum, but everything else that you're spending on costs more. And hold on to that thought, because I'll then explain the next analogy. Now, I want you to think of yourself not just as an earner, but somebody who spends within an economy. The first change that has been made has to do with medical, right? So private medical services now attract VAT. Previously, they did not. So if you're paying for private healthcare, that is your pomade, your pula, your botsogo, etc., a consultation or a procedure or just a visit, hey, now carries 14% VAT on top of what you were paying. And private medical providers who are not registered for this particular service have until 31st of July to have registered and start charging from the 1st of August. So the cost of getting sick in this country, if you use private healthcare, has now gone up. And there's an economy whereby medical aid premiums already were off the roof. And imagine in this day and age, you go queue at Marina. That's a death wish. Now, probably speaking to the SMEs, because they too are affected, right? If you run a business as a sole proprietor that you're earning less than 1 million pula a year, there's now a simplified income tax regime that is specifically designed for you and is generally worth your attention, of which the old system sort of treated you in the same complexity as a large corporate, and the simplified regime is more meant to sort of ease down that burden. And I'm not going to tell you what automatically is going to make things a bit more better for you, but what you want to do is sit down with a professional accountant like myself and ask directly whether you qualify for such and whether it leaves you in a better off position, because most proprietors haven't heard about this, but there's some that you actually want to be jumping on. However, if you're a big operator, a registered company, this picture is much more heavier for you, because income tax has now increased from 22% for companies to 24.5%, and there's a new administrative regime underneath it, because the record retention has now moved to 8 years. VAT returns are now due 28 days after the tax period, and if you're selling an asset, there's a capital gains tax that is now payable within 28 days after the sale, not at the end of the year. So there's now a cash flow trap that we need to be mindful of. And this is over and above, plus the digital services VAT that we also talked about a couple of videos ago, something that you want to keep in mind. Let's also just take a step back. Hey, Botswana has actually had 2 straight consecutive years of economic contraction rather, and the part of the economy that is actually supposed to help grow us, which is the private sector, had only grew by just 2% last year and down 4.4% the year before. And the same private sector is the same one that is actually supposed to lead us from a diamond-led economy to economic diversification. And now the cost of doing business and the tax regimes, the timing of cash flows, all of these are constraints in terms of how private sector is supposed to participate within such an economy. And this is not to say taxes are wrong to be used in this way, because government does need the money. However, fiscal policy is pulling in one direction, whereas the transformation agenda is communicating a different aspect. And both of these seem to have a disconnect. So I want those policymakers and government to start thinking about such notions, because it does affect us as ordinary Botswana, it does affect us as entrepreneurs and so forth. So I want to be talking about more of these within our newsletter. Do subscribe up to www.thecapitalbw.com/newsletter. This is where some of these insights are going to be coming in. Thank you very much, and you have yourself a good day.